This video is brought to you by War Torn. Stick around at the end to find out more. So a while back I was talking about how a video game can make an NPC, that is a jumble of pixels, code and pre-recorded dialogue, into something that feels like a friend. Let's get back in that mindset as I ask the related question, how do you make a video game location, that is a non-existent digital space composed of a jumble of visual assets and hitboxes positioned with X and Y coordinates, feel like a home? How do we as players acquire emotional attachments to virtual spaces? In many cases it might be hard to see how such a thing could be of benefit, especially if we're dealing with a linear narrative game formatted as a string of set pieces, playing out one after the other. If we're dealing with characters who are trapped in an epic adventure or life or death struggle, and giving them a place where they feel comfortable might be contrary to the intended vibes. It would probably take something away from the intensity of reboot Lara Croft's survival experience if she ever had a chance to unwind and rearrange her bra. I chose that example basically at random, but suddenly I'm realizing that Lara Croft does have a home, quite iconically in fact. In the original series, Croft Manor was a recurring tutorial level. There was a butler and everything. That's not really what I'm talking about though, because that was Lara's home. It wasn't the player's home. I'm talking about a recurring space the player can voluntarily or involuntarily go back to over the course of the main game, which they end up seeing as their home, with all the emotional investment that implies. There are three reasons you might want to create such a thing. Firstly, I'm a great believer in peaks and troughs as a gameplay model. If you crank the excitement up to 11 and stay there, the result can be quite numbing, I find. That was the Tomb Raider reboot's problem. I can't even remember half of what actually happened in those games. In my memory, it's just a big wall of screaming and sliding down hills on our bum a lot. Exciting action and peril is thrown into sharper relief if it's broken up with moments of calmness and reflection in a safe place. Secondly, if the plot of the game involves saving the world, it would certainly be helpful to give the player a sense of investment in that world that extends beyond it's what we need to do to win the game. I'm certainly not going to want Ganondorf to lay waste to the land if I've only just got my front lawn set up the way I like. But even if the plot has a smaller scope and is only about pursuing the main character's interests, giving that character a place that both they and the player can unwind and lower their defenses can do a lot to make them relatable and human. Home is a very human concept, after all. When I played Blades of Fire recently, one of the first things the main character does when he's called to adventure is burn his own house down to throw off pursuers, and it was the first of many incidents that caused me to conclude the guy was a total fucking bellend. The third and most interesting benefit is that once you've established a place as home in the player's eyes, you then have the opportunity to fuck with it in a variety of ways, which can add all the more emotional impact to a twist in the plot. You might have something like that one mission in XCOM where the aliens invade the player's base that until then had been our little base building, resource management, refuge away from all that nasty turn-based combat. Or the wonderful twist at the halfway point of Silent Hill 4, when the ghosts start invading your apartment, and what had once been the calm, restorative oasis against the horror slowly becomes indivisible from the chaos you have to deal with outside it. So, with all that in mind, how do we make a place in a game feel like a home? I'll tell you what doesn't work for me: giving the player a house and telling them it's their home. I never understand why Bethesda thinks I'd want to own a house in their games. Oblivion, Skyrim, Fallout 3 and 4. They all give you a chance to have a house, but there's never anything to do there but stand around admiring your decorations for a minute before buggering off and getting on with what's important. Also, I never felt like my house in Animal Crossing is my home, which might sound weird considering it's literally our central motivator in that game, but I spend so little time there. I'm more about the fishing and the collecting and the swapping t-shirts with my mates. Sometimes I'll drop some furniture in there if I happen to acquire some, but I don't feel emotionally invested any more than I would in a fucking rented storage unit. So first ingredient for an in-game home, there has to be a gameplay reason to frequently go back there, in much the same way we grow fond of NPCs if they have a useful gameplay purpose. Many games have what we call hubs, a place that connects all the areas or that we go back to in between missions, but those don't automatically become homes. I'm thinking of the Doomslayer's ship in Doom Eternal, which never felt like home because it was so confusingly laid out. I can never remember where anything was. I also don't get a home vibe from Firelink Shrine or Majula in Dark Souls 1 and 2 respectively, even though the games are both trying to create one, because these areas are not cut off from the dangerous parts of the games. They both have skeletons in the basement, for fuck's sake. So as well as having to go there a lot, it also has to be a place where we feel safe and in control. Is that all? Well, it can't be, because I think of the example of, I think it was Fable 3. In place of a menu, the game had a home base you would instantly teleport to, where you could organise your equipment and such like, which was a place you certainly went to a lot in the course of the game, where you understood where everything was and were always perfectly safe. It fills all the criteria, but why didn't it feel like home? Well, I suppose partly because it felt like an unreal space with no physical relationship to the world where our actual struggles were, and partly because I didn't give much of a shit about what I was doing in Fable 3. In other words, the missing ingredient was investment. environment. Here are 3 games that all do a good job of giving the player a place that feels like home. See if you can spot what connects them. Stardew Valley, Persona 5, and The Alters. Side note, fucking play The Alters. It's one of my favourite games this year. Did you spot the mechanic they all have in common? That's right, a very specific kind of day-by-day timekeeping, wherein we have to down tools, return to base, and go to bed in order to end the current day and resume work in the morning. More importantly, in all 3 cases, this is also how we save the game. And in terms of creating a save space, it doesn't get much better than literally being the place where we save. Have you ever noticed, as I have, that it's quite difficult to stop playing such games because you have to save before you can quit? But after saving, you wake up in your comfortable bed, a new day has dawned, a new list of tasks lies ahead of you, the act of quitting the game suddenly feels like a wrench. So much easier to just go with the flow. I could do another day, I've practically already started it. Insidious, really. But it rather illustrates the aforediscussed benefits of making the player feel at home. The Alters is also a base building game, of course, and if any game genre is running give the player a sense of investment in a location on easy mode, it's base building. Hard not to be invested in something you literally invested your resources into building, but that's not quite the sort of investment I'm talking about. I built bases in Fallout 4, and games like Ark Survival Evolved, and I didn't give a shit about those, partly because they were fixed in place, and those games are not about staying in one place. The home bases in The Alters and Spiritfarer feel like homes because they are mobile. They are means by which you get to places, and your safe, reliable haven against the ever-changing outside world. But that's also not the kind of investment I mean. It's not the layout or the practicality, it's the memories. The kitchen module in The Alters isn't just the place where we dice carrots, it's where we shot that amazing music video at about the game's midpoint. My ship in Spiritfarer doesn't just have a prow, it's got the prow where me and Alice the Hedgehog used to hang out. And look, there's the spot where Juliet the Honey Badger tried to nibble my arms off. Feel free, of course, to nominate in the comments the places in video games that most feel like homes to you. But to summarise all this meandering, I think it comes down to 4 ingredients. It has to be somewhere that's useful enough to gameplay to require regular visits, somewhere you can fully get your head around, somewhere where you can expect not to be attacked, and that you associate with pleasant memories from the game's story. Application, reliability, safety, and emotion. Remember the acronym. ARS. Actually, let me think of a better one.
This video is brought to you by War-Torn, the single-player squad-based roguelite with deep replayability. War-Torn features a dynamic combat system where you harness elemental forces to your advantage, ignite tar to engulf enemies, amplify electric shocks with water, or douse flames to shift the tide of battle. It's like Captain Planet, but with significantly more goblin murder. A unique roguelite progression system and physics-driven destruction adds layer of depth and unpredictability to every skirmish. Between battles, build out your caravan with squads of various fantasy creatures and check in on them through your overworld map or cozy villa hub that's big enough for earth, fire, wind, water, and even heart. Yeah, I guess. And all this is wrapped in a painterly aesthetic that is pretty enough for Gaia herself. Played by Whoopi Goldberg. That's true. So what are you waiting for? War-Torn is out now in early access on PC via Steam and the Epic Game Store. The power is yours! To check out the link in the description to learn more.